something. Hey. Is this blood? Does this look like blood to you? Or am I just tripping? Bloody footprint? You see this right here? Could possibly be blood.
It started with a bucket in the basement. When Tara Pekanik pulled back the towel, she didn't just find her son's severed head, she stepped into a nightmare that defied reason. His body had been carved apart with disturbing precision. But the real horror? The killer didn't run. She stayed. She talked. And she smiled. Taylor Shabiznes wasn't just high. She wasn't just violent. She wanted to be caught. But what drives someone to turn murder into a ritual, and call it love? The basement smelled like dust and damp concrete. A single bulb lit the room, casting long shadows across storage bins and laundry piles. In the corner sat a 5-gallon bucket draped with a towel. When Tara Pekanik lifted that towel on the morning of February 23, 2022, she found something no mother should ever see: her son's severed head, his face frozen in what looked like fear. She screamed. What followed would unravel one of the most disturbing murder cases in Wisconsin history. Police arrived within minutes. They found the rest of Shad Therian's remains scattered across the house, organs stuffed into plastic bags and cardboard boxes, a bisected torso sealed in a storage tote. His severed foot was placed on top. Blood was smeared across the basement floor. Inside a crock-pot box, officers discovered more body parts. It wasn't just brutal, it was calculated. And the person responsible had made no effort to hide it. Later that day, police tracked down 24-year-old Taylor Shabiznes. She was found at an apartment on Eastman Avenue. Her clothes were soaked in blood. She had a gash on her thumb, scratches on her arms, and a blank expression on her face. In the back of her gold minivan, investigators found even more human remains. But when they asked her what happened, Taylor didn't cry. She didn't run. She didn't deny it. Instead, she told them, "That's a good question." And then she laughed. She told police they'd have fun trying to find all the organs. She claimed she blacked out, and then added that she liked it. This wasn't just a drug-fueled killing. It was an unraveling, slow, deliberate, and horrifying. But how did it begin? What led two young people into a basement where only one would walk out? And why did no one see it coming? Shad Therian was only 24 years old when his life was violently cut short. He grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, the kind of place where neighbors wave from their porches and kids ride bikes until dark. He was quiet, sometimes painfully so, and deeply introverted. But to those who knew him best, Shad had a warm, sometimes goofy sense of humor and a soft spot for people who felt like outsiders. He lived with his mother, Tara Pekanik, and her boyfriend, Steve Hendricks, in a modest house on Stony Brook Lane. It wasn't glamorous, but it was safe, at least it used to be. Shad struggled in school. He dropped out before graduation and had been in and out of jobs, trying to find something steady. Friends and family say he was still searching for a path forward, someone figuring life out a little later than most. But he wasn't reckless. He wasn't violent. What he was vulnerable. Over time, Shad became more withdrawn. He started experimenting with drugs, first marijuana, then harder substances. Methamphetamines became part of his world. So did people who lived on the fringes of society. One of those people was Taylor Shabiznes. The relationship between Shad and Taylor was difficult to define. Police reports and court testimony referred to it as a sexual relationship. But those closest to Shad were confused by it. Taylor was chaotic, unpredictable, and deeply unstable. She had been in and out of jail, struggled with drug use, and had recently removed her GPS ankle monitor without notifying authorities. Still, Shad kept seeing her. He didn't tell his mother much about their relationship, just that he was trying to help her, according to later statements. Whether that meant emotional support, drug use, or something darker, we may never fully know. What we do know is this. When Shad left the house with Taylor on the night of February 21st, he told his mom he'd be back later. He never came home. Whatever drew Shad to Taylor's business, it wasn't love in any traditional sense. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was loneliness. Or maybe, just maybe, it was something he thought he could control. But once they went down into that basement, everything spiraled out of his hands. The house on Stony Brook Lane sat still, blinds drawn, as investigators stepped inside on the morning of February 23, 2022. It was quiet, too quiet, except for the hum of basement lights and the steady shuffle of crime scene boots on tile and carpet. It began with the bucket. Tara Pekanik had called 911 after lifting the towel and seeing her son's head inside. It was positioned upright. Still. Silent. Just a few feet away, the rest of Shad's remains told a story more horrific than anyone expected. Police found a plastic storage tote nearby. Inside, Shad's torso, severed clean through the middle. His foot was placed beside it like an afterthought. Organs were bagged and stuffed into cardboard boxes. Blood had been drained into the bucket and washed down the basement shower. A blacked-out crock pot box in the back of Taylor's business's minivan contained more body parts, including one of Shad's feet. Everything had been done methodically, but not carefully. There was no real attempt to cover it up. Knives from the kitchen were scattered around. Sex toys were left on the floor. A leash and metal chains were tangled in bedding near the body. On the walls, investigators spotted smears, trails of blood that traced back to the bed where the strangulation occurred. Taylor later told detectives they had engaged in what she called rough sex. They'd used a chain around Shad's neck during intercourse, something she claimed they'd done before. But this time, she didn't stop. According to her own words during the police interview, Shad began coughing up blood. His face turned purple. It took 3 to 5 minutes, she said, for him to die. And once he did, she just kept going. Taylor admitted to using the corpse for hours, performing acts that were later confirmed by physical evidence at the scene. She then began dismembering the body with kitchen knives. When one blade broke, she found another. She placed the body on the bed, held the head over the bucket, and sawed through the neck. When asked why she didn't stop, Taylor said, "I thought it was already too late." She described the entire scene with a chilling absence of emotion, like someone recalling a dream they couldn't quite explain. She even remarked that she'd planned to take the rest of the body parts with her but was too lazy to finish. The only thing more horrifying than what was done was how calm she was after doing it. Taylor Denise Business was 24 years old when she was arrested, but her life had unraveled long before that night in the basement. Born and raised in Wisconsin, she grew up with a long history of instability. Court records and police reports would later reveal she struggled with severe drug addiction, including methamphetamine and psychedelic substances, and had a pattern of erratic behavior that often turned violent. She'd already faced charges earlier that year, for fleeing police and obstructing an officer. In that case, she was sentenced to just 3 months, and it's still unclear whether she was on work release at the time of Shad's murder. But Taylor wasn't just another addict. She was chaotic in a way that left people unsure if they were talking to someone high, or someone completely detached from reality. At the time of the murder, she had removed a GPS tracking device that had been placed on her ankle, without notifying authorities. No one had checked in. No one followed up. Her Facebook page painted a bizarre picture. Photos with captions referencing violence, mental breakdowns, and dark humor. In one post, she referred to herself as a psycho. In another, she joked about wanting to take someone's face off. But the most chilling insights came from Taylor herself, during her police interrogation. She admitted to smoking meth and injecting trazodone, a strong sedative, just hours before the murder. She said the drugs made her black out. But she never denied the killing. In fact, she gave disturbingly specific details, describing how long it took for Shad to die, how she sexually violated his corpse afterward, and how she tried to clean up. When detectives asked if she planned to leave the body behind, she answered coldly, I was going to take the rest with me, but I got lazy. Then came the moment investigators never forgot. When asked if she thought she should feel remorse, Taylor paused, smiled, and said, I liked it. Later, during her mental competency hearings, psychologists diagnosed her with multiple psychiatric disorders, including bipolar disorder and antisocial traits. But the court ultimately found her fit to stand trial. The judge ruled that although she suffered from mental illness, she knew exactly what she was doing, and chose to do it anyway. Her motive? Taylor claimed she snapped during sex. That she couldn't stop strangling him. That she was too far gone. But deeper down, there's a more unsettling truth. Taylor Shabiznes didn't kill Shadthirian in a moment of rage. She kept going because, in her own words, she wanted to see what it felt like. A violent fantasy met a willing victim, and no one stepped in to stop it. Just when investigators thought they'd uncovered the full horror of what happened in that basement, a darker truth emerged. Taylor Shabiznes wasn't trying to hide what she did. She didn't panic. She didn't run. She stayed in town. She even returned to the same Eastman Avenue apartment where the night began, where she'd smoked meth with Shad and a mutual friend just hours before the murder. That's where police found her, wearing blood-soaked clothes, arms scratched and cut, her left thumb bleeding. The gold Chrysler Town and Country minivan parked outside still reeked of decomposition. Inside, a crock-pot box. And in that box, more of Shad's remains. But it was what she said next that forced detectives to reconsider everything. She told them she blacked out. But her memory was sharp, too sharp. She remembered details no one could forget. The placement of the chains. The color of the blood. The moment she realized Shad had stopped breathing, and the decision to keep going anyway. At one point during the interrogation, she laughed. Not out of nerves. Not out of confusion. But like someone reliving a moment they enjoyed. And then she said something no one expected. I thought it was funny that I put the foot in the same tote as the torso. To detectives, this wasn't just a murder. It was a performance. It had ritual. It had intent. And based on her tone, it may not have been her last. In fact, one detective asked her directly, If we hadn't caught you, would you have done this again? Taylor paused, then shrugged. Probably. That wasn't an exaggeration. In court, prosecutors revealed a haunting twist. Taylor Shabiznes had a documented obsession with serial killers. She'd researched mutilation, dismemberment, and cases where sex and murder intersected. She wasn't spiraling out of control, she was following a fantasy. This wasn't a drug-fueled accident. It was the start of something she'd already rehearsed in her head. In hindsight, the murder of Shadthirian wasn't just brutal. It was methodical, staged, and, most horrifying of all, rehearsed. Taylor Shabiznes had tested the limits of cruelty, and according to her own words, she wasn't finished. The trial of Taylor Shabiznes wasn't just about guilt, it was about sanity. And whether society could even process what she had done. On July 26, 2023, a Brown County jury convicted her on all counts: first-degree intentional homicide, mutilation of a corpse, and third-degree sexual assault. Her sentencing came exactly 2 months later. September 26, 2023. The courtroom was silent as the judge read her fate. Life in prison. No chance of parole. Ever. But even that didn't feel like enough for those who loved Shadthirian. His family sat through every graphic detail of the case, photographs of the crime scene, forensic breakdowns of what had been done to his body. His mother, Tara Pekanik, had found his head in her own basement. She will never unsee it. And yet, no sentence can erase that trauma. No prison walls can contain what she now carries. And while Taylor is locked away, the questions she left behind are not. Why didn't the system intervene sooner? She had a criminal history. She had removed her GPS tracker. She was known to police. And still, there was no warning, no knock at the door, no one checking to see if she was spiraling. That failure left a 24-year-old man alone in a basement, with someone who would later say she Wanted to see what it felt like to kill. Mental health experts testified that Taylor suffered from multiple disorders, but the court still found her legally sane. Which raises an unsettling dilemma. What happens when someone knows exactly what they're doing, and wants to do it again? Shedtherian was remembered by friends as quiet, kind, and trusting, maybe too trusting. He never saw it coming. No one did. But the red flags were there: Shabusiness's online persona, her history with drugs, her unpredictable moods, and disturbing jokes about violence. And yet, she moved through the system unnoticed, untreated, unstopped. There's one final moment from her interrogation that still haunts the detectives who questioned her. After describing every cut, every choice, every hour spent with the body, she leaned back and said, "I thought it was funny how easy it was." Not once did she express regret. The courtroom is closed. The sentence is final. But the real terror of this case doesn't end with a conviction. It ends with a question. What if she hadn't been caught? And who else like her is still out there?